Imagine this. You're standing at the edge of a crowd, not quite in it, yet not completely apart either. Your presence is magnetic, yet distant. You've mastered the art of detachment, not out of cruelty, but out of strength, of self-possession. And yet, you notice the eyes that follow you, the attention that lingers just a moment too long. There's something about your absence, your deliberate silence that calls out to them, invites them to pursue, to chase, to unravel. But you don't move. You simply exist with an air of serene mystery. And this is when the obsession begins. What is it about women who keep their distance that drives men to obsession? Why does the subtle, effortless pull of a woman's absence stir such deep emotional unrest in the psyche of men? The answer lies deep within the uncharted territories of the unconscious, where ego, desire, and the shadow self converge. Men, as creatures of ego-driven desire, are instinctively wired to seek validation and approval. But the woman who remains emotionally out of reach triggers something far more primal. She is an enigma, a silent force that challenges their sense of self. In a world where everything is calculated, controlled, and attainable, she is the elusive goddess that represents the forbidden, the unattainable. And it is precisely this unattainability that entices them, because a man's desire grows in the shadow of what he cannot easily possess. Carl Jung understood the dynamic of projection, the way in which one's unconscious desires, fears, and unresolved conflicts are projected onto others. The woman who keeps her distance becomes, in the eyes of the man, a mirror reflecting his deepest, often hidden desires. She embodies not just beauty or attraction, but the untouchable, the unknown. She represents his shadow, the parts of himself he cannot face, the unacknowledged parts of his own soul that he seeks to resolve through her. She is a blank canvas, an empty space upon which he projects his fantasies, desires, and often his regrets. But why does she remain distant? It is not out of cruelty, nor is it an act of power. No, it is the embodiment of something much deeper. The woman who keeps her distance is in touch with her own power, her own sense of worth. She understands that her energy is precious, not something to be spent on every fleeting interaction, nor to be taken lightly. She knows that to chase external validation is to lose one's own sense of self. The truth is, when a woman keeps her distance, she is protecting her own sanctity, her own sacred space. She understands the delicate balance between intimacy and independence, a dance that requires constant awareness and choice.
The woman who remains unattainable represents something more than mere avoidance or aloofness. She embodies individuation, the process by which one becomes whole. She has faced the dark, unconscious forces within herself, the shadow that many fear to confront, and has emerged stronger. Her detachment is not a rejection of others, but a refusal to compromise her own sense of self in exchange for fleeting approval. In the face of ego-driven desire, she stands firm in her own sovereignty. For the man, this distance feels like an emotional riddle, a challenge he cannot solve. His ego, accustomed to chasing and conquering, cannot tolerate the idea of an unattainable woman. In his mind, she is an object to be won, a conquest to be claimed. But in the absence of her submission, the ego begins to unravel. Her refusal to engage on his terms forces him to confront his own vulnerability, his own weaknesses. And it is this discomfort, this emotional destabilization, that sparks obsession. But obsession is not born of healthy desire. It is rooted in the projection of one's unmet needs, an attempt to satisfy an inner hunger with something external. The man who obsesses over a woman who keeps her distance is not truly in love with her. He is in love with the idea of her, an idealized version that exists only in his mind. She becomes the embodiment of his own longing, his own unfulfilled desires. The more she withdraws, the more his mind fixates on her, because his ego cannot bear the thought of something being beyond his grasp. This is the dance of attraction, where the unconscious forces at play shape our actions, our desires, and our relationships. But what of the woman herself, standing apart from the chaos of pursuit? What of her inner world? Her detachment is not a game nor a manipulation.
It is the manifestation of a deep spiritual knowing. She is connected to her own feminine energy, not the transient, superficial energy that exists in the realm of ego and competition. In a world that constantly seeks external validation, she is a beacon of the quiet power that lies within the self. Her distance is a declaration of her own worth, her own independence. It is a refusal to be defined by anyone else's expectations. And while men may chase her, she knows that her worth is not something to be won. It is something she already owns. This, then, is the paradox of attraction. The more a woman knows her worth and remains emotionally distant, the more men are drawn to her. They are not drawn to her aloofness, they are drawn to her self-sufficiency, her ability to exist independently. Her detachment is not a rejection of them. It is a reminder that true power comes from within, and that nothing, no man, no validation can define her. As the dynamic of obsession unfolds, the woman who remains distant becomes a force that transcends the simple mechanics of attraction. Her energy becomes a mirror to the deepest corners of a man's psyche, awakening desires and fears he did not even know he harbored. It is in the absence of her attention that he finds himself spiraling into a labyrinth of self-doubt and introspection. Every fleeting glance she offers, every moment of silence, amplifies the inner void he seeks to fill. The more she pulls back, the deeper he plunges into his own unconscious, struggling to understand why he cannot possess her, why her presence is so elusive, so deeply irresistible. Carl Jung would describe this as the confrontation with the shadow, the hidden, often repressed aspects of the self that can only be revealed when projected outward. The woman who keeps her distance, knowingly or unknowingly, becomes the perfect catalyst for this psychological process. She forces the man to face the darker aspects of his ego, the parts of himself he does not want to acknowledge: insecurity, fear of inadequacy, and the hunger for validation. These are the seeds of obsession. In this process, the man is pulled into an emotional spiral, attempting to reclaim the sense of control that he has lost to her mystery. His psyche begins to break down the very notions of power and possession that it once held dear. He may attempt to chase her more aggressively, believing that this will restore his sense of dominance. But the harder he chases, the further she seems to slip through his fingers. This is the paradox of the dynamic. The woman's emotional distance strips away his ability to control, revealing how little his ego truly governs the affairs of the heart. For many men, this creates an inner turbulence, an unquenchable thirst for something they cannot possess. The very thing that makes the woman desirable is her ability to be unyielding, to exist without the need for validation. She becomes a mirror to his own discontent, a reminder that his worth is fragile, contingent upon his ability to win the approval of others. The obsession begins as an attempt to conquer this disquieting feeling, to fill the emotional gap left by her absence. But the more he seeks her out, the more that gap widens. Yet it is not only the man's ego that is at play here. The woman, as the keeper of her own mystery, holds a deep connection to the feminine archetype, the goddess, the anima, the untouchable muse. In Jungian terms, the anima represents the unconscious feminine aspect within every man, a figure that embodies his deepest longing for wholeness and transcendence. The unattainable woman, therefore, represents this anima figure. She is a projection of his own inner desires for completeness, for a union of the conscious and unconscious, the masculine and feminine. In his pursuit, he is not just chasing the woman, but this pursuit can never be satisfied. The more a man strives for what he cannot have, the more deeply he is immersed in the unconscious forces that govern him. The woman who keeps her distance is not an object for his conquest. She is the embodiment of the mystery that resides within all of us. She is the feminine energy that exists beyond the reach of the ego, a presence that cannot be contained or controlled. Her silence, her distance, is an invitation, not to chase, but to reflect. It is here, in the midst of this complex emotional interplay, that the true nature of power emerges. Power is not found in the chase, nor in the validation of others. It is not found in the fleeting moment of possession or control. The woman who understands her own worth is the woman who is no longer tethered to the need for external approval. She stands in her own power, detached from the whims of the world around her. She knows that her value is not defined by the attention she receives, nor by the men who pursue her. Her detachment is a testament to her inner strength. When a woman pulls back, when she refuses to chase the validation that the world expects of her, she sets in motion a profound shift. The man, caught in the spiral of his own projections, begins to question his own worth. The game of attraction turns into a mirror of the psyche, a reflection of his own unconscious desires and unresolved conflicts. His obsession, which he believes is driven by desire, is in fact driven by the need to reconcile the parts of himself that have been denied. The woman who keeps her distance teaches a powerful lesson that true power comes not from the pursuit of others, but from the ability to remain steadfast in one's own sense of self. She is the embodiment of the feminine archetype that stands outside of the confines of ego, outside the pull of societal expectations. She is both the mirror and the mystery, reflecting back to the man not who she is, but who he might become if he dares to confront the shadow within himself. In this dance of emotional distance, the woman reclaims her sovereignty. She knows that the obsession she stirs in a man is not about her, it is about him. It is about the unresolved parts of his soul that he projects onto her, and yet, despite the chaos of his emotions, despite the obsession that threatens to overwhelm him, the woman remains unshaken. Her power lies not in what she gives, but in what she refuses to surrender. She does not chase, for she knows that she is already whole. As the obsession deepens, something profound begins to shift within the man, though he may not be fully aware of it. The more he chases, the more he attempts to solve the riddle of the woman who keeps her distance, the more he is forced to confront himself. At first, this confrontation feels unsettling, uncomfortable, even unbearable. The ego struggles to retain its grip, its need for dominance, for control. But it is precisely in this struggle, this inner tension, that the seeds of transformation are sown. For the woman who remains distant is not merely avoiding the pursuit of others, she is inviting them into a deeper confrontation with their own inner worlds. The more she distances herself, the more the man is forced to look inward, forced to face the aspects of himself that he has kept hidden from view. And here, in this uncomfortable place of emotional vulnerability, something rare and transformative begins to occur. The potential for individuation, the process by which a person integrates the unconscious with the conscious mind, reconciling the fragmented parts of the self. Jungian psychology reveals that the path to individuation is fraught with difficulty. It requires a person to face their shadow, the parts of themselves that have been repressed, denied, or ignored. These parts often manifest in the form of projections, feelings, thoughts, and desires that are externalized and attached to others. In the case of the man obsessed with the woman who keeps her distance, she becomes the projection of his shadow. She is not merely a woman to be won. She is the embodiment of his own unacknowledged longings, his deep-seated fears, his unresolved inner conflicts. The more he projects these unconscious elements onto her, the more his obsession grows. The cycle of desire, chase, and frustration becomes a mirror that reflects his own inner fragmentation. But it is here, in this moment of inner chaos, that the opportunity for growth lies. If he can summon the courage to confront what he has projected onto her, if he can face the shadow that she embodies, then he has the chance to integrate those unconscious parts of himself into a more whole and authentic self. The woman who keeps her distance is not a mere obstacle to be overcome. She is a guide, a silent teacher in the process of individuation. By remaining unattainable, she encourages the man to do the difficult, uncomfortable work of self-reflection. She forces him to question the very foundation of his desires, his needs, and his ego-driven pursuits. It is through this process of inner conflict and self-confrontation that the man begins to transform. But what of the woman herself? What does this journey of emotional distance and self-empowerment look like from her perspective? It is easy to misunderstand her silence, to label it as coldness or aloofness. But in truth, her distance is not a punishment. It is an act of self-preservation, an act of power. She has learned that to chase the validation of others is to lose herself. She understands that true worth is not defined by the attention or approval she receives. It is inherent, unshakable, and does not require external reinforcement. Her emotional distance is not a manipulation, nor is it a game. It is the result of deep self-awareness and self-respect. She knows her worth, and because of this, she cannot be swayed by the ego-driven pursuits of others. She is not interested in being chased. She is interested in being seen, in being chosen, in being valued for who she truly is. And because she remains unattainable, she forces others to step up to her level, to meet her on equal ground, not as an object to be possessed, but as a sovereign individual worthy of respect. This, in turn, has a profound effect on the men who become obsessed with her. Their pursuit is no longer simply about winning her affection. It is about confronting their own limitations, their own desires, and their own shadows. They are drawn not only to her beauty or her mystery, but to the strength she represents, the strength to stand alone, to remain true to herself, to be unshaken by external forces. The woman who keeps her distance is a reflection of the inner strength and autonomy that all individuals, men and women alike, must cultivate if they are to live authentically. This dynamic, though often misunderstood, reveals a deep psychological truth that real attraction, the kind that transcends superficial desire, is rooted in the recognition of one's own worth. The man who is drawn to a woman who keeps her distance is, on some level, attracted not to her specifically, but to the energy of self-sufficiency and self-respect she embodies. He is drawn to the very qualities he lacks: the ability to remain emotionally autonomous, the strength to be whole within oneself without needing to depend on anyone else's validation. And it is here that the true power of the unattainable woman is revealed. She does not chase after anyone. She does not bend to the desires of the ego. Instead, she stands firm in her own power, quietly asserting her boundaries, calmly refusing to be reduced to an object of desire or conquest. Her silence is not emptiness. It is fullness, a fullness that radiates strength, mystery. The more a man chases her, the more he is invited to confront his own unconscious projections. The more he tries to possess her, the more he is forced to face the parts of himself that he has ignored. And while his obsession may appear to be about her, it is ultimately about him, about his own journey toward individuation, self-awareness, and emotional wholeness. The woman who keeps her distance is not just a subject of obsession. She is the catalyst for transformation, the mirror that reflects the hidden depths of the man's psyche, and the silent teacher who shows him the path toward self-realization. In this powerful, emotionally charged dance, both the man and the woman are invited to transcend the limitations of their egos and move toward a deeper, more authentic understanding of themselves. As the obsession intensifies, the dance between man and woman becomes a deeper and more intricate psychological interplay. But the key lies not in the pursuit or the tension of attraction. It lies in the lessons that are unfolding beneath the surface. For the woman who keeps her distance, her emotional withdrawal is not an abandonment, but an act of empowerment, a choice to remain unshaken in the face of the world's demands. Her mystery is not a weapon, nor is it a shield. It is a reflection of her deep knowing, her understanding that nothing in this world can define her but herself. She is the embodiment of feminine sovereignty, an archetype that eludes the grasp of the ego and remains steadfast in her own power. Jung's notion of the anima, the inner feminine energy within every man, offers a profound lens through which we can understand this dynamic. The anima, as the archetype of the feminine, resides in the unconscious of every man, often projected outward onto women. She represents not just the feminine qualities of a woman, but the man's own connection to his own emotional depth, creativity, and intuition. The unattainable woman who stands apart and keeps her distance represents this elusive anima, the part of him that remains beyond his grasp. When a man finds himself drawn to a woman who embodies this energy, who seems untouchable, unreachable, he is not simply yearning for her. He is yearning for the part of himself that he has yet to integrate, the part of his unconscious that he has not yet fully acknowledged. His desire for her is ultimately a desire for wholeness, for self-integration. But the more he projects his desires onto her, the more she eludes him. She cannot be contained or defined by his projections, because she exists in a realm outside of his ego, beyond his understanding. And this is what creates the obsession. The woman who keeps her distance, then, becomes the mirror to the man's own fragmented psyche. His pursuit of her reveals the cracks in his own emotional armor, the places where he feels incomplete, where he lacks the courage to face the depths of his own soul. He may chase after her with increasing intensity, but the truth is, he is chasing after something within himself, something he is unwilling to confront. And the woman, standing firm in her own autonomy, reflects back to him not just what he desires, but what he fears. Her emotional distance is not a punishment. It is an invitation to introspection. By refusing to engage with the ego's constant demands for validation, she provides the space for the man to reflect, to question, and to ultimately face the parts of himself that are still in the shadows. She does not need to chase him, she merely needs to remain in her own power. And in doing so, she forces him to confront the deeper layers of his own psyche. His obsession is...
At this point, the obsession may appear to be about the woman, but it is truly about the man's inner struggle, his battle with the parts of himself that he has yet to accept. The more he projects onto her, the more she becomes the focal point of his desire. And yet, because she refuses to be defined by his projections, because she remains unattainable, she serves as a mirror for his own self-discovery. His obsession becomes the gateway to his own emotional evolution, but only if he is willing to face the truths that have been hidden in his unconscious. For the woman, this distance is not just an emotional defense. It is a declaration of self-respect and self-sufficiency. She does not need to chase approval or validation because she understands that her worth is inherent, not dependent on anyone's recognition. Her emotional detachment is a reflection of her own inner strength, a strength that is not defined by the approval or rejection of others. She knows that she cannot control the way others perceive her, but she can control how she perceives herself. And it is this inner clarity, this self-awareness, that makes her magnetic. When a woman stands in her power and keeps her distance, she becomes the embodiment of something larger than herself, the feminine force that exists in the unseen, the unspoken, the unknowable. She is the dark goddess, the archetype of the wild, untamed feminine energy that cannot be captured, cannot be caged. She is the one who stands firm in her own sense of worth, regardless of external circumstances. And it is this unwavering strength that draws men to her.
not because she is cold, but because she is whole, because she is complete within herself. In this dynamic, the man is forced to confront his own fragmentation. He is not simply chasing after a woman. He is chasing after the parts of himself that he has yet to integrate. He is searching for something outside of himself to fill the emotional void within. But the truth is, no external object, no external validation can ever fill this void. The only way to fill the void is to turn inward, to confront the unconscious parts of oneself, and to begin the work of individuation. The woman who keeps her distance does not offer him a solution. She does not offer him a quick fix to his emotional turmoil. Instead, she offers him the gift of reflection, the opportunity to look inward and to confront his own shadows. She does not need to give him anything because, in her silence, she offers him everything he needs to become whole. And it is this silence, this emotional distance, that holds the greatest power. The woman who remains emotionally unattainable does not need to chase or manipulate. She simply needs to be, and in being, she becomes the catalyst for transformation. She forces the man to confront himself, to face his shadows, and to begin the journey toward wholeness.
This, then, is the true power of the unattainable woman, the woman who keeps her distance. She is not a prize to be won, nor a game to be played. She is the embodiment of the feminine energy that transcends ego, that stands firm in her own power, and that invites others to do the same. She is the mirror, the guide, and the reflection of all that is hidden, all that is unknown, all that is yet to be discovered within the self.
As the man grapples with his obsession, he begins to unravel the layers of his own unconscious. In his mind, the woman who keeps her distance is the one who holds the key to his emotional salvation, the one who will fill the emptiness that he feels deep within. But what he fails to realize is that the key he seeks lies not in her, but in himself. The woman, by remaining emotionally detached, is not withholding something from him. She is offering him an opportunity to find what he is desperately searching for within. She holds up a mirror to his soul, forcing him to confront the parts of himself that have remained hidden, neglected, or denied. Jung often spoke of the importance of integrating the shadow, those parts of the self that are repressed or pushed aside because they are deemed unacceptable or undesirable. In the case of the man obsessed with the unattainable woman, his shadow may manifest as the emotions he refuses to acknowledge, his insecurities, his fears of inadequacy, or his inability to truly connect with his own emotional depth. His obsession with her is in many ways an attempt to project these unresolved aspects of himself onto her, to make her the object of his desires, and to use her as a means of filling the emotional gaps he refuses to address within himself. But the more he projects, the more she slips further from his grasp. The unattainable woman is not simply a figure to be conquered. She represents the very essence of what is inaccessible to the ego, the mysterious, the untouchable, the unexplored depths of the unconscious. The more he chases her, the more he is pulled into the labyrinth of his own psyche, unable to find his way out because he is not truly chasing her. He is chasing the part of himself that he has been avoiding. This obsession is not just about desire, it is about something much deeper. It is about the man's struggle with his own inner fragmentation. His desire to possess the unattainable woman is a manifestation of his desire to become whole, to integrate the parts of himself that have been neglected or repressed. But the more he tries to possess her, the more he realizes that she cannot be possessed. She is not his to claim. She exists in a realm beyond the ego's reach, and this is what drives him mad with desire. For the woman, her distance is a profound act of self-respect and self-awareness. She is not playing a game. She is simply being. She is not seeking validation from anyone. She is whole within herself, and her emotional detachment is a natural extension of this wholeness. Her refusal to engage in the ego-driven dance of conquest is not an act of rejection, but a statement of her own power. She knows that her value is not defined by anyone else's desire for her. She is not here to be possessed or controlled. She is here to live, to express her authentic self, and to invite others to do the same.
Her detachment is not a rejection of love, but a call to the man to love himself first. It is an invitation for him to stop looking outside of himself for the validation he craves and to start seeking it within. She is not offering him anything that he does not already possess. She is not withholding affection or attention. She is simply refusing to be an object of his projections, refusing to be reduced to a mere prize to be won. She understands that true love, true connection, can only come when both parties are whole within themselves, not when one is dependent on the other for validation. And this is the deeper lesson that the man must learn: that love, desire, and connection cannot be driven by the ego's need to possess or control. These are not the forces that bind people together. True attraction, true intimacy, arises from a place of mutual respect, mutual understanding, and emotional wholeness. The man must learn that in order to truly connect with the woman who keeps her distance, he must first learn to connect with himself. The obsession, then, becomes the catalyst for a profound shift. It forces the man to look inward, to confront the unconscious parts of himself that have been hidden away. It invites him to embrace his own shadow, to acknowledge the parts of himself that he has denied. And in this process of self-discovery, he begins to realize that the woman he has been chasing is not the source of his happiness or fulfillment. She is the mirror that reflects back to him the work he must do to become whole. The woman, standing in her power, unbothered by the chase, is the embodiment of what it means to be whole. She has already gone through her own process of individuation. She has faced her own shadows, confronted her own fears, and emerged stronger for it. Her emotional distance is not an act of punishment. It is an act of preservation. It is a reminder to the man that true strength lies in self-sufficiency, in the ability to stand alone, and in the refusal to be defined by anyone else's projections. As the man begins to understand this, his obsession starts to fade. He realizes that the woman he has been chasing is not the source of his fulfillment. She is not the answer to his longing. The answer lies within himself, in the work of self-acceptance, in the integration of his unconscious, and in the reclamation of his own power. He no longer needs to chase the unattainable woman because he has learned to stand in his own worth. He no longer needs her approval because he has learned to approve of himself. And the woman, knowing this all along, remains emotionally unattainable, not because she is cold or indifferent, but because she is whole. She does not need to chase or be chased. She simply chooses, and in her choosing, she embodies the greatest power of all, the power of self-ownership, the power of emotional independence, and the power of knowing one's worth. The woman who knows her worth doesn't chase. She chooses.